Hey guys, Coach Alberto Nunez here, and I'm going to help you guys out with some plateaus. In this case, we're talking about fat loss plateaus. So hey, look, if we hit a plateau, that means that we did make some progress. So congrats on that progress that we did make. We gave ourselves the right amount of calories, the right amount of cardio, and we were making some progress, but now it's slowed down to a creepy crawl or maybe no progress at all. So there is a third variable that I think sometimes people forget when it comes to setting up their fat loss diets, right? So we have the diet, we have the cardio, we set the proper amount of calories, a proper amount of cardio, but sometimes we forget about setting up some neat baselines. And I mean neat, the acronym, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is gonna be all the things you do outside of the gym. Things like, hey, your favorite music comes on in the car, going up some stairs, walking around the supermarket, what you do at work, things like that. So your body really downgrades how likely we are to move around when we've been in a caloric deficit long enough, right? So think to yourself, how different does a pair of stairs look to you when you're deep into a fat loss diet compared to when you're eating plenty of food and you're trying to put on some muscle? So a good way to standardize your NEAT is to just have a baseline number of steps that you're going to take every single day. Anywhere between 5 to 8K steps usually is a good place to start. Again, this is going to help us not only break through fat loss plateaus, but in many cases have found myself, once we have that set in place, our step count for the day, I've seen it actually make it so that athletes just don't need as many adjustments over the course of a fat loss phase in order to keep things going. So don't forget to set up your NEAT. Don't forget to get those steps in. Another thing I see sometimes is that people just don't give themselves enough trial time when it comes to the calories they set up, when it comes to the cardio they set up, when it comes to the amount of steps they set up. So usually what's still very popular, way too popular, is people sit on this combination of these variables for about a week, sometimes 2 weeks. Generally speaking, if these numbers make sense, I think most people should wait and sit on a caloric intake for at least 3 weeks. And often for women, I find 4 weeks to work a lot better. And on top of that, what you're looking for during every week is not necessarily the lows, but you want to see the weekly average, and you want to compare your average from week 1 to your average from week 3 or to your average from week 4, and then you see the difference, and that way you're going to have a clear idea if you are losing the right amount. And sometimes you will realize this, that sometimes the best adjustment you can make is no adjustment at all. Just sitting on an intake that makes sense, an amount of cardio that makes sense, an amount of steps that makes sense, just sitting on that long enough so that we can give our data enough time to really let us know whether or not what we're doing is working. So again, don't aim for a certain amount of fat loss to happen on a weekly basis. Stretch out your timeline a bit. I think 3 weeks of sitting on a intake, an amount of cardio, or a step count, so those 3 things for 3 weeks is the bare minimum. And in many cases, women usually tend to do better with 4 weeks of sitting on a protocol. So you might not even be hitting a fat loss plateau at all. And I know that quite often when we're chugging right along and doing our thing with the fat loss and things have slowed down to a complete stop almost, the first place we want to go to is we want to add some cardio, we want to remove some calories, maybe add some steps as well. But quite often what we're missing here is, and I know it seems kind of counterintuitive, is the one step back so we can take 2 steps forward model here, is that good old diet break. So a diet break is going to be a 1 to 2 week period where you are eating at maintenance. And what you're going to see is that this helps when it comes to your compliance, when it comes to your weight room performance, when it comes to your overall sense of well-being, which is going to help us with some potential water retention that we might be dealing with. It's going to help the GI tract get moving again, because sometimes constipation, the food bulk that we're eating, which usually goes up when we're eating less total calories, well, sometimes that tends to weigh us down. You might see that finally gets a little bit closer to normal. What I see more than anything is just simply on the other side of the fat loss phase, things tend to just start working. Not exactly how they did initially when we started the fat loss phase, but in general, they start to pick up again. So again, sometimes just like we take days off in our training, sometimes taking or having time off away from the deficit when you're designing your fat loss plan is exactly what you need. This can be a very hard move to make, but once you've been through a few successful diet breaks, you will see that you will no longer want to do them any other way. So don't forget the diet break. 1 to 2 weeks at maintenance can be a marvelous thing to keep things moving in the right direction.